So many great times in that car, though. I remember spilling my guts to like a girl, for the first time. Basically, it was like just me and her. I totally got shot down, but you know, it's like those kind of memories too.
Right.
Fortunately, I had Sticks to listen to on the way home, I'm sure.
Lady.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Richard Lowen, Bismarck, North Dakota, Hazen, North Dakota native. I used to run Rhythm Records in town, done a lot of different arrays of different things, and musician, singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, arborist.
Arborist.
Yeah, I
huh?
got my arborist certification this last winter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, smart enough to know what I don't know
Yeah.
about trees.
Right. Is it something like you didn't know beforehand and now you know it? You just kind of like, you know, all these different trees?
So I got into the industry in 2020 when like there was no music and stuff. I was going to be taking the leap and just doing music full time, and then COVID happened. Yeah, it was kind of unexpected. And then I just had a lot of information that I needed to learn, and it was really interesting to me. And so I just kind of kept diving into it further and further. And yeah, I look at plants way differently now than I ever did before, which has become really fun. And yeah, just a fun part of like traveling and stuff like that, and seeing what kind of different plant life is out there. And I do a lot of like painting and different types of art as like a hobby. It's usually what I'm doing if anyone's wondering where I am. And then I just play in a ton of bands and write songs and practice instruments. Currently, I'm playing in The Shaky Calls, Aventide, Artificial AIs, The Prairie Wranglers, Johnny Spud, technically, still rocking. We haven't played in a little while, but still going. I sit in with Cosmic Cadence Orchestra pretty regularly whenever we can, and then just a couple side projects that don't really play out, but just working on stuff. And I hope I'm not blanking on anything. Kind of always feel. Oh yeah, I started playing in a bluegrass band with Joe Andrus out in Valley City. Joe and John, his dad. That's been new to me, so I've been like learning about bluegrass and what makes it bluegrass and what's not bluegrass.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in.
Definitely, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And that's all the time we have, I guess, right? No, I'm just kidding. You ever say no to being in a band?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, within the last maybe 2 years or so, I just started really liking ignoring that and just saying yeah and seeing what happens. My first car was a 1989 Mercury Topaz that I bought from my friend's older brother, who had kind of upgraded from his first car. I think he had gotten like a Honda Civic or something, those exciting cars when you're in high school. And so I got it for $500, and I was working at Subway. And so I was able to buy my first car with my own $500. Felt pretty good. And seemed like everything was possible after that,
About what year is this?
So maybe 2002, 2003, sometime in there.
It's our second Topaz for the podcast.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Who else had it?
My friend Mandy came in a few weeks ago. She had an 87 Topaz,
Okay.
I think. So
I thought mine
pretty
might
well.
have been 87, but I was like, I think it was 89 if I'm really, really
Yeah.
delving. But yeah. Yeah, it had like a moon roof. And of course, he had upgraded a CD player in it, so that was great to have a CD player. Even just the CD player in a car was just so much freedom. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling like you could do almost anything. It was the first time ever that like I felt like adulthood could be possible, you know. It was
Yeah.
like, all right,
Yeah.
you
It
know.
seems to be a common theme amongst guests: freedom.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. Definitely picking all of the songs that you hear in a car. I mean, my parents are very religious, so it was like the furthest we would delve was John Denver, you know, outside of like religious music. Maybe the occasional Garth Brooks eventually, you know. But yeah, being able to select all the music that I was listening to, there's a lot of Rage Against the Machine and Sublime and Styx comes to mind. A lot of good times listening to Styx in that car. And then of course the burned mix CDs.
Yeah. Mixed CDs, man.
Yep.
Mixed tapes, mixed
Yeah.
CDs. God.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, that's a good soundtrack to a first car.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about getting your license.
Oh, sure. So I feel like there's probably a lot of us, but I was one of those kids that like kind of put it off as long as I possibly could. And then I also like really freaked my parents out because they gave me like a couple of different opportunities, you know, to drive before you've got your permit or your license or anything. When you live in a small town, you know, your parents will take you out somewhere and give you an opportunity to try it out and learn a little bit like that.
Sure.
And my dad had always told me this story growing up, like that back in the day they used to do like a brake check to like I don't know to like check your reflexes or something like that. And my dad was like, oh, and I hit the brakes so fast and like that my teacher went, you know, flying or something like that.
Right to the windshield.
Yeah, yeah, right. And so he told me that as a kid, and so it was like my first time driving, and my mom was sitting next to me, and I was like, would it be okay if we did the brakes reflex check? And she was like, yeah. And I just slammed on the brakes like the second she said yeah, and was like, and like, yeah. And so then it was, and it actually like shook me up too, kind of scared myself. And then so they weren't like pushing me or anything like that. And then they started to, and they were having me drive home from something. And yeah, I feel like I'm just outing my parents for being a little reckless, but you know how it is. So I'm driving, and I feel like I was old enough that I should have comprehended this, but I didn't. I just thought that if the speed limit was 25 miles per hour, that when you turned, you were also going 25 miles per hour. And I was driving us home, and like the turn was up ahead, and my mom's like, oh, like you got to turn here. And I was like, oh, I know. And she's like, well, slow. And I just like cranked, just, yeah, totally just cranked the wheel. And like, I can still to this day hear my mom just like, slow down. Just like, this is like the moment lasts forever. You know,
Yeah.
it's like awesome. So, and it's the timelines are really blurry for me because we had these different vehicles that I learned to drive in, but I know that by the time I took my driver's license test, the only vehicle that we had was a Chevy Gladiator van, a 1998 Chevy Gladiator, and so that's like one of those like big, you know, full family vans.
Oh, okay. That's a cool name.
Yeah,
Gladiator.
it was great. It was like, I feel like it probably nearly ruined my parents' marriage. I think my dad kind of like impulse got it on a vacation one time.
Yeah.
You know, the kids were probably driving him crazy or something on the trip, and he needed, I guess, I don't know. He went like looking around at cars and found this, like, I don't know if it was like a cinema edition or something like that, but it had theater lights like embedded throughout the vehicle all over the place, and it had a TV with a VCR in it.
Oh yeah.
So it was just absolutely the most epic van.
Right.
It was, in that time, it was, yeah. And it was 1998, I believe, when we got it. So it was like, yeah, just.
So brand new.
Oh yeah, brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was awesome. But fast forward a few years later, and I was like older, and that's when I learned to like parallel park and stuff, and I had to take this like big Chevy Gladiator van for my driver's license test, and like parallel park and so I remember parallel parking being like a big obstacle many a times, of like my mom just being like, just shut the car off, just like, because I'm having some kind of a meltdown, being a turd about it, just screaming at each other, just trying to go 10 feet,
Yeah.
But yeah, and then ultimately my permit test I took during a blizzard. There was like feet of snow on the ground, and it was in Hazen, so somebody made the trip up to Hazen in a blizzard to have a bunch of kids take their or maybe it was your license. Yeah, it was sorry, this was the driver's license portion, because the permit I think was written. But so the gal,
so they would have somebody from Bismarck, the DOT, go to Hazen for a
I'm sure they
test?
still do. Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. It's just like, it's not often. You kind of have a smaller window to
I
to get it done, or you can drive up to Bismarck.
Okay.
So yeah, we like get in the vehicle for my test, and like went through all the, buckle seatbelts, check mirrors, and so on and so forth. And I slid in the snow all the way through a 4-way stop sign, like first thing, just right out the gate. And I assumed that I blew it. And I guess since it was a blizzard and she was feeling kind, she was like, and your test starts now.
Oh, cool.
So I small towned my way into a driver's license.
Yeah.
And then I rear-ended somebody like 2 weeks later.
Dang.
Yeah, man, it was rough. I had a rough go at it right away. With driving.
Yeah. Were you a nervous driver?
I would say, and then a lot of the driving that I did early on was in the winter too. So it was like kind of like appropriately nervous, I guess, to a point, like, and I had a really bad accident my senior year on the ice as well. Yeah, a whole nother thing, but fortunately it was not injured or anything, but I totaled the car out on black ice.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've always kind of got a little trepidation when it comes to driving on ice. And I do like snow removal and stuff, so I haul like heavy equipment around on the ice and stuff. And I'm more of a nervous passenger.
Oh, I am too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm driving all the time.
Yeah.
I can't ride with people,
Same,
especially
same.
in winter. I don't know, but you don't have that control, and you're putting your life in somebody else's hands.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah, my best defense to it is just trying to like tune it out and just accept the fact that they haven't died yet. So
Yeah.
it's hopefully going to be okay.
Right.
That's my move.
I'm looking for a car that's put together real well.
Solid, quiet.
Quality is workmanship.
The thing about quality is that it doesn't just happen. It's got to be planned. With Topaz, we were probably a lot harder on ourselves than we had to be. Like making sure the seams didn't vary more than 1.5 millimeters from design standards.
I know that car's been well made, or it hasn't been well made.
It's a slow and a frustrating process, but in the long run, it's the only way to do it. After 5
5 years, over $1 billion, and 1 million miles of testing, Mercury proudly presents Topaz.
My Mercury Topaz did become kind of famous in town because my catalytic converter got filled up with carbon. And so every time I would pull up to a stop sign or anything like that, it would literally it rattled like a can of like nails and chains, just like and like I let it go for a really long time like that and got made fun of a lot for it. But I was just like turning my music up and opening the moonroof, you know.
Trying to drown it out.
Yeah. And so eventually my good friend John was kind of like, he did like derby races and like demolition derby stuff. So he was kind of a car guy, and he was like, "Oh, we can just like cut that off." And I was like, "Oh, well, great. You know, my car friend knows that this is okay." And so we cut the muffler and the catalytic converter off of the vehicle.
Okay.
And it like sounded and smelled like a snowmobile for like the rest of the time that I had it. It was
Jeez.
like just really loud. I think actually, it wasn't the rest of the time I had it, because the city the city intervened and told my dad that we had to put a muffler on the car.
Yeah. It's that
But,
loud?
yeah.
Did you get pulled over or something?
Never. No, I didn't. But yeah, it sounded like a chopper. I mean, it was just super, super loud.
Right. This was in Hazen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Small town stuff.
Somebody must have complained.
Yeah. I would imagine. Maybe several. Back to the Gladiator. So my dad sold sports figures and sports cards and stuff on eBay and Yahoo in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really into that. And then at one point in time, he decided to sell the Chevy Gladiator van on eBay or Yahoo and see what happens, you know? And so it's sold. Somebody bought it in another country, and they like mailed a check, and the check was for like $10,000 more than what he was selling the vehicle for. And he was like, "Oh, there must be some kind of a mistake. You know, the check that you sent was for more than the asking price." And they were like, "Oh, you know, it must have got we must have got confused with the exchange rate or something like that. And so can you please Western Union us the difference?" And so I remember my dad. Yep. I remember my dad asking me to go with him up to Bismarck, and we went to Kmart, had the Western Union up there. Yeah. And so we went there, and he was like so proud of himself, like just setting these like stacks of cash, and he was so proud for having sold the van on the internet and stuff, you know, and like just Western Union's 10 grand to this guy. And then 2 days later found out that it was a fraudulent check. And yeah.
That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew it was from out of country. Was he planning on shipping the vehicle?
We had to stop it. We had to, the vehicle was already like going to be shipped. It was going to get on a ship. Yeah. We had to stop it. It was like in motion to happen and everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Early internet fraud scams.
Gosh.
So probably a good lesson to learn early on, honestly, but it like devastated my family.
That has to. I couldn't see how it couldn't.
Yeah, and like we were not like from money by any means. Things were always tight. I mean, that's like, I remember when he got that van, like it was a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like we had just purchased like a modular home, and like that was a huge step for them too. My dad is a pastor, and so we had always lived in parsonages, and so they had bought a house for the first time ever at that point too, and we ended up losing that house because of that whole situation.
Moved.
Yeah. But this takes me to the Mercury Topaz. I mean, it was like there was just so much hardship and anger and embarrassment and sadness and stuff, and I just spent all my time driving around in that car and sitting in that car and listening to music, and like, you know, that was like my escape hatch. So when I heard you were doing, you know, this, it was just like, yeah, you know, I can see why. It's so many different things come up from it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's some of the origins. So many aspects of that have to do with who I am too, you know.
Right.
I loved having a job too, and just, you know, that being able to get to and from that job without getting rides and stuff. And
Yes.
yeah, I remember like scraping ice off of the windshield and stuff like that, and like it was awesome. You know, it was like, this is amazing. Like, this is what you got to do.
Yeah.
It's like, now it's like the worst thing, you know, to have to
Right,
scrape
right,
your
right.
windshield.
Yeah, you
before
wake
go.
up in the morning,
Yeah.
you got to get somewhere, and you're
Yeah.
like, ah, damn it, this sucks.
Yeah, I
But
was
at
like,
the time when it's yours, you're like, I get to do this. I don't have to.
Yeah, I was working at Subway, and I would have like the opening shift at like 4:30 in the morning on the weekends, and I just remember like standing outside.
What the hell? What time would they open?
So I mean, that's plant life. So they were open at like 5.
Huh.
Yeah, and all the plant workers would come into Subway and load up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
get 2 footlongs, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, back when they were $5?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then the stamp cards.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Subway stamps.
Man, everybody has gotten rid of, you know, when sodas would do the buy one or the free 20 ounce under the cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody used to have like coupons, or, you know, if you get a certain amount, you get a free something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I
sucks.
always joke.
Those were the days.
So Rhythm Records still does the punch card, you know?
Cool.
And I always joke that me and this guy Paul, we're gonna like completely bankrupt the record store when we cash in all of our
Just
punch
save
cards.
save them all up until 9 or whatever. And,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
nice.
And it's like
I've actually, I still have like a few coffee cards,
oh yeah,
and it's like get a free one on the 10th. And I have like 3 or 4 that are filled up to 9. So I'm just going to run those in whenever I need a, you know,
absolutely.
a fix.
Yeah. Have you seen Is it Punch Drunk Love?
Yes.
Yeah, where he's collecting is it pudding?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for miles, I think, airline miles.
And
Yeah.
he's like, they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things are fun though. In the old where Rhythm Records used to be, I had found out at one point in time, somebody came in and just told me about it, but it used to be a green stamp redemption spot. It was like the green stamp place. And so like when you were like grocery shop, and you could get green stamps and you put them on cards, and when you got to a certain amount of cards, you could go in and trade them in for like little prizes and stuff like that, you know, like selling like Girl Scout cookies or something like that. You know, if you sell a certain amount, you have this little pamphlet and you can look through and get like a little radio or like, you know, and so on and so forth. So yeah, those were the days.
Yeah. What happened to free shit, man?
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell? Were you a dirty kid?
My cars are like notoriously dirty. Yeah. I went with a friend to Minneapolis, and my little sister picked us up, and he was like, "Good job. You're not like your brother." And I was like, "Oh." You know, I just always have a lot of projects skewed about and garbage, I guess. And
Yeah.
I'm good at getting it out, but I build it up pretty quick, you know. But the interior of the Topaz, it was like a blue kind of suede kind of material with water damage from the leaky moonroof.
Oh,
It had like the shifter was like kind of down next to you, kind of like a manual, but not manual, which I just felt like that just felt so cool, you know?
yeah.
To have
Yeah.
your hand over on the side.
Yeah, you probably just drove with your hand on
Oh,
it sometimes.
that's all I needed. Yeah. Yeah. Small towns too. It's a lot of stories I shouldn't tell.
There's probably a few you don't want to. So
A lot of good times in those cars. Freedom.
right. I can imagine a smaller town. I mean, somebody gets their license. Were you said you were a little behind.
Yeah.
So all your other friends already
Yeah,
had
they'd
their,
all been driving for a long time, you know, and
So I suppose everybody else had their own vehicle by the time you got yours. You weren't piling everybody inside and cruising around.
it was, you know, everybody did that, you know, at some point in time. I kind of was I did like to be the driver once I was into it. And yeah, I mean, I was pretty fearless too, eventually, like once I, you know, got over the humps of like learning and got more comfortable, as important of a tool as it was, and as much as I loved it, in those small towns, you know, you just drive out of town and you can off-road. I mean, and you can like hit little like ramps and stuff, you know. I mean, we were pretty fearless with our cars in that time too. Like,
careless.
yeah, absolutely.
Fearless and careless.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like a lot of off-roading in that vehicle, and just like driving out and trying to find a place where you could somewhat describe to your friends how to get there too, so that you could have a party.
Oh, sure.
You know? And like just driving out, maybe finding a section line, or you know, trying to find, always looking for beaches, always looking for like small secluded sandy areas next to water, and then always trying to explain to other people how to get there,
Yeah.
and then you just never get caught.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Never get caught, but we got caught.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, plenty.
You gotta put Mercury on your list.
Remember my first road trip with my older sister. That was cool. That, you know, yeah, road trips, like actually leaving town in your first car.
Heck yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah.
Game
that is
changer.
The best. Yeah. I think, yeah, my first road trip with my sister was awesome. We just drove to all of the like small towns that we had lived in when we were like little, that we didn't necessarily, I mean, we remembered, but like maybe didn't have the, like we're probably only there for a couple of years, moving around a lot with like different churches and stuff like that. My dad was a Methodist minister, and so usually you're in the town for like 3 to 5 years, and then you'd move to another town. It was pretty common practice. And so we bounced around a lot when we were young. And then, yeah, when my older sister is like just a year older than me, we're pretty close in age. So, yeah, we took our first road trip together, and like, yeah, just drove to like some of those small towns that we remembered little parts of, and it was just awesome being able to do that and like
Find it on your own.
yeah,
Too.
yes, and to like add to the memories of those towns later.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like now I have a different memory of McCluskey, North Dakota, just because me and my sister went there later again.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it just added to it. And yeah, I mean, just you can't beat being able to do that kind of thing. And then sneaking out at night, I mean, it's a lot of evidence that you're gone, but we pulled it off. We loved driving to Beulah
Wait, how would you sneak away with a loud ass car like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It might not have been my car that we drove, I guess. I'm just thinking of first cars in general.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine mine's not the getaway car.
I had to start that up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that probably didn't happen. What was your first car?
An '88 Beretta.
Ooh.
Yeah, had the handles up on the side.
How was that for you?
It was fine, except in winter, like it
Yeah.
felt like it would break off.
Yeah.
And I've heard they're notorious for
Yes.
snapping off, but
Yeah.
mine never did. I didn't like the car until way later. Like so I started doing a little reminiscing too. And now I look back, it was a 5-speed. And most of my vehicles are. I try to keep it that way now.
Cool.
Just funner to drive, you know. But at the time, I just didn't like it. It was a faded red. It had a digital dash, and the gas would empty. It would still show a quarter tank left. So I would run out frequently until I would learn my lesson, which I actually never did. I would just run out of gas because I'd be like, you know. But that was also cool having a digital display. You know, I wasn't used to that.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't get the vehicle until 2001, I think, or 2001.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a car that's like 13 years old, but still had a futuristic style to it. So it was kind of a cool and not at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I can remember the kids that had the like cars with that kind of thing. You know, it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You get in their car like, wow. And it was like old.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but still to us it was
Yeah.
just like fancy.
Yeah.
This LeBaron
I
is
don't know
nice.
when some displays came out, but man, I've heard of other vehicles having that digital display. You know, early 80s vehicles. I'm like, oh, what the heck? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember
They didn't really perfect it until later, but yeah. And now, like some of the newer cars with all the bells and whistles there's too much.
Yeah.
Too many knobs and buttons. They're all over the steering wheel and the dashboard. You got like a whole TV right there and the reverse thing. And some don't even have like shifters. It's just a turn knob.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Like, what the hell?
Yeah,
How do
that-
I drive this
that
thing?
makes me uneasy.
No key. You just push a button. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about like with the intro to my podcast, I had to take a bunch of sounds. I'll play it for you too, but I like the classic, you know, a key in there and the turn and the start. And,
Yeah.
yeah. Now cars with the hybrids too, you don't have that rev sound. There's something to it.
What do you think about self-driving cars?
You know, when I first heard about it, I'm a big fan of Total Recall.
Sure.
The original one with Arnold.
Yeah.
And the Johnny Cab would come by and pick him up.
Okay.
And if it was going to be something like that, it sounded cool at first. But then I've seen some of the videos where the cars just kind of have they see a shadow or something and think it's a car in front of them. So they'll just slam on the brakes.
Yeah.
Or one car got rear-ended a little bit and then it just took off and it started going like 80 miles an hour in residential. And, you know, so they're not there yet. I think it's kind of like the early 80s digital display, you know, like after a couple of decades, they might, you know, get it down.
Yeah.
But,
Or even the existence of cars in general. Like, you know, people.
and seeing like other people recorded while they're sleeping.
Yeah.
And they're just,
Yeah.
I could never do that.
Yeah.
I can't sleep if somebody else is driving.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm going to let somebody else drive.
Yeah. There, in some ways, I wonder if I don't kind of like prefer self-driving.
Yes.
like I would almost like rather, you know, I mean, if you take all the drivers in the whole world versus all the self-driving cars in the whole world, like, show me that data.
Yeah.
You know, like.
What eventually happened to the Topaz?
I think I sold it for like very, very little to put towards the second vehicle that I got.
And you originally bought it for 500.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think
what would very little
maybe
be?
like $100 or something like
Yeah.
that, you know? Yeah.
And then what'd you get?
I got a 98 Chevy Blazer, like a red Chevy Blazer that had 4-wheel drive.
All right. So you upgraded a decade.
It was that was insanely that was also just like equally amazing, just like switching from this like thing that was just barely hanging on eventually to the Blazer was just like I'm back. And so the day that I got my Blazer, me and my friends went storm chasing in it, and we drove like out of town, and we were on gravel roads, and you know we could see like this hill out in the distance that looked like a really good spot to watch the storm moving in. And so we like opened this gate on this property we had no business being on and drove through. And as we got down this little gully, the ground collapsed.
What?
Like all of a sudden it was just like boom. And I didn't know what happened. I thought I got like flat tires. And I got out of the car and I saw that the ground had collapsed under the car. And so both the front tires were just like spinning in the air over like collapsed earth. And
Yeah.
I didn't know how deep it went down or anything like that whatsoever. And so I got out and I was like yelled at everybody to get out of the vehicle because I was afraid that it was going to like fall through the earth. And so I was like, I'm going to try to jack it up and put it in 4-wheel drive and just back out of this situation. And so I like was able to get the jack under the car and I got it jacked up. And then when I got in the car, the ground under the jack collapsed
Jeez.
in just a perfect hole, and the
Yep.
jack just fell down into the ground. So then I actually had to like go down and see how deep it was underneath, and it was only like 4 feet or something like that, but I mean that's a deep hole. And I had to like reach under the car to get the jack in this hole, and this is like first day that I got this vehicle. And yeah, and so I pulled it out, and this time had somebody in the car, and the second it was like up high enough to like where the back tires were touching, we were like, floor it, and he floored it and like drove over the jack. And yeah, we were able to successfului get out of that situation and drive away and never look back.
Did you ever figure out what that was?
I mean, you could tell that like the little like valley that we were driving in had water in it at many different points. You know, it was like, but there just wasn't any water there right now. So I think that like erosion from the movement of water underneath had just like left it like, so there were some spots like that. And it wasn't in the like Mine Hill areas where like, you know, it's kind of classic out there. Like, you know, people can like lose their dogs, and like you got to be really careful out in the old like minefields.
Yeah.
Or like they're the old, mining areas, I guess. But I think this was from water.
Yeah. Lucky.
Yeah, definitely. And I was always so horrible with vehicle maintenance. I mean, probably until like the vehicle I have now, I would say I have a really bad track record with like oil changes and knowing your coolant levels and, you know, just any of that basic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, that might have been the end of the Topaz. I remember I was driving and it just started smoking immensely, and I like was right by the gas station that I worked at with the subway inside it, and I like pulled into this And I'm sitting there like I've got my hood up, like I know
Right.
anything whatsoever, and I'm just like watching smoke billow out of my car. And my biology teacher and football coach saw me, and he came over and was like, "Oh, what's going on?" And I was just like, "Yeah, it's just smoking. I don't know." And he like took the cap off the like coolant reservoir, and it was just like there's just nothing in it whatsoever. And he's like, "Well, you don't have any coolant." And I'm just like, "What's coolant?" Like, oh, I think I know what coolant is now. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that I learned my lesson there, but I think ultimately the same thing. I remember driving my Blazer. This is while I lived in Bismarck. I mean, I was just so broke too, though. It was like every decision meant something else. You were going to lose something else. Like if I do this, then I can't eat. If I do this, then I can't pay my rent. You know, it was like all
Been
like
there.
that.
Yeah.
And so like my last memories in the Blazer were just like, it just felt like it was gonna blow up and explode every time I drove it, and just like not doing anything about it whatsoever. Just like, this is just what I do, I guess. Some people are like this. Some people can. It's just what happens. And like, and I've gone without vehicles many times as well. I mean, I like exclusively rode bike everywhere in Bismarck for years. Yeah, and then I finally I got my Chrysler Town and Country, and I've just been like babying that thing, just had a good time in my life. It's got some cosmetic damage, but never from when I was driving. But yeah, regular oil changes, and just getting it serviced all the time. And that, like, I'm so proud of that. I really am. Like, just knowing that, it's like that exact same freedom, knowing that I can like take care of something well enough that if I need to go to like California tomorrow, I could technically do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be afraid.
Yeah.
Unlike the other vehicles, you're like, I don't know if that'll make it to the state line.
Yeah, but I mean, I've gone through my fair share of automobiles and just not taking care of them. Do you want to hear another car story?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I was a delivery driver for Herbert and Gerbert's for like 6 years. At that point in time, I think my parents had an extra vehicle, so they had set me up with a Chevy Malibu, and it was like the one I feel like probably both my younger sisters learned to drive in it, kind of a thing. And but I didn't have a car, and I got a job driving delivery. And so in the wintertime...
Did you apply to be a delivery driver before you had...
Probably not.
Oh, okay.
It was, yeah, probably not. I would imagine not. Although, I mean, I worked in-house at Herbert and Gerbert's a lot too, so I might have just been working at Herbert and Gerbert's and then got a vehicle.
Sure.
Possibly. I can't remember. I have had way more jobs than I have cars, and like when I try to figure them out, it even feels like I'm lying. like it doesn't make sense. And I know I worked at every single one of them, and I'm just like, the time, it makes it harder for me to tell what time period anything took place. I a lot of times was working 3 jobs at a time, or 2 jobs at a time. Yeah. And so it just
then they'd kind of overlap another one. Sure.
Yep. I worked at Herbert and Gerbert's at the same time as probably 3 other jobs, like at different times. Like, it's just kind of how I went.
Yeah.
But it makes it hard to gauge the wins.
Yeah.
But so this gal was coming out of the hospital parking lot, and there were huge snowdrifts on like all sides. And she just decided, like, I'm gonna go now. Like, she couldn't see anything, and she just gunned it, and just like out of nowhere, just boom, just smashed into my car. And so like, I remember it was like this, my parents were like, all right, we're going to allow you to have the insurance money. And I was just like, this is awesome. Like I was like, I'm going to get like a really cheap car, and I'll have a bunch of money left over from the insurance, And I want to say I got like $3,200 or $3,500. And
Right on.
when you're super, super broke, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
do I even need a job? Like,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So,
How long can I live
yeah,
off this?
exactly. And so I got that money, and it was probably the most money I had at one time. Like, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna be smart about this. And
Right.
so I like looked around all over the place, just trying to find like the perfect cheap car. And I got in on the strip in Mandan at one of those places, I found maybe like a 2000 or a God, it could have been a 90s, or maybe it was even in the 80s. I don't know. It was this, I found an old Pontiac Grand Prix Sport Edition.
Okay.
And like, so it was like this like kind of cool looking like car, and it was like $1,500. And I was like, this thing is perfect. And so I mean, I barely test drove it, got the thing. And so it was winter. It had those vertical door handles on it.
Yeah.
First, I snapped off the driver's side one.
Son of a bitch.
And so first that one went. And so I always had to use the passenger side door to get in. And
Yep.
for deliveries and stuff, like just like trying to like get the sandwiches somewhere safe so that I could crawl over
Sure,
and get
right.
into the seat. And then a tragedy struck, and I broke the second handle on the other door, so I couldn't get into the car. And then I had spent all of that money on different things, rent and groceries and whatever, and other stuff. But
CDs probably.
yeah, but I bet you I drove the car that I replaced that car with for a combined 2 months out of the entire time that I had it. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't get into the car forever, saved up enough money to get the door handles to work. And then the transmission went in the parking lot of Herbert and Gerbert's. And they said that I could leave it there for a little bit until I could get it serviced or whatever. And like 2 days later, I showed up and it was gone.
Oh no.
So that's how that went.
They just towed it.
Yeah, somebody towed it, and I was like not in a position to get it back.
That's the thing.
and
Like when you're poor, you remain poor because you can't afford a vehicle that works. So that vehicle is going to break down, and you're going to have to. It'll just nickel and dime you.
it's so fragile.
It's the worst.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're so fragile. Like you have, and that's why the opportunity to do things sometimes is like you kind of, I mean, yes, you want to like prepare for the future and stuff, but it's like when you have the opportunity to do something, it might not be there,
Yeah, yeah.
very soon. Just how fragile things can be, when you're having a rough day or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like, remember when your entire means of earning a living and transportation disappeared like that, But I think I had that car in my possession for like maybe like 2 years and was able to drive it for like a month,
Right.
which is another kind of fun aspect of cars. It's like how many cars have people held on to that like couldn't go anywhere,
Oh, right. Yeah.
like for long periods of time, just like as soon as I can afford it,
Yeah,
this
just-
one's gonna get me somewhere, and it's
Right.
like that's kind of an interesting aspect of it too. I liked your mopeds out front.
Yeah. Those are badass.
Yeah, do you use them a lot?
Yeah, as much as I can.
Yeah.
I was going to take it to work this morning, but I saw it was wet out, like it rained last night. I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't check the weather. I had to go, so I wasn't sure if it was going to rain or not. But
Nice.
yeah, it's just over a gallon that it holds. but it goes about 100 miles to the gallon.
Wow.
Yeah. So when gas is up there, this thing is nice. And I like to fill it up with premium and just go in there and slap a 5 on the counter. Say, here you go. Keep the change. And then I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. Give me that change. Yeah, that thing's fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, my dad got a moped last year, the year before. He loves it. Yeah, he cruises around Carrington on his moped.
Yeah, the crappy thing about North Dakota, though, is like you get maybe 6 months out of the year you can drive it.
Yeah. Yeah, when he got his moped, previously to that, he had, he must have been going through some kind of midlife thing because he bought one of those Coleman bikes from Runnings. Have you seen those? Yeah, yeah. And so I've got that now.
Yeah, that's
It's
cool.
sweet, yeah. Yeah, I keep meaning to like take it out to the desert or something and see if it can take me around the sand, you know?
Yeah, I wiped out on one once on a dirt road. Just trying to take off real quick, and then I spun out a little bit, and then I went flying and rolled. God, when I flew off too, like I hit my hand, and then like my elbow hit me in the ribs. I rolled a little bit, my shoe flew off. I got up, got back on. Yeah. One friend was there. I was still a little embarrassed, but I was like, I'm good. Yeah. But they're fun. Can be dangerous, but yeah.
Did you ever take any of your vehicles off-roading or anything like that? Like maybe at the
No,
desert
not mine.
No.
I was with a friend in his first car. I couldn't tell you what it was. I was a freshman in high school. Or just after.
Prime age.
I think it was that summer. And he had gotten his license. He had gotten a car. And we were just driving around one evening. And we went over this big hump. We weren't expecting it. Just went over and we're like, oh, whoa, that was a big one. And then we kind of look at each other. And he's like, do you want to do it? Should we turn around and hit it? Yeah. We're like, well, hell yeah, let's do it. And gosh, I remember... not really expecting too much out of it. You know, we drove down maybe about a block and then turned around and just kind of looked at each other and we're like, all right, we're going to gun it. Let's do it. So he hits the gas. We cruise. We hit this bump. We go flying. I'm not wearing a seatbelt. My head hits the ceiling of the car, and then we land and we just bounce around all over and come to a stop. And he was like, holy cow, that was crazy. We end up driving back into town, and the car is making a bunch of noises and whatnot. We stop at one of those gas stations that has like the mechanic right there at the time and a garage. And the battery, he opens it up, and the battery is like way out of place, like in a different spot than it should be. I don't even know how it's still running. Yeah, at the time I was like, well, it's his car, you know?
Yeah.
It was so dumb, yet kind of a thrilling, fun memory.
Yeah, it's triggering some things for me too.
Yeah.
The other really fun thing to do in small town, Hazen, was... if there was a snow day, like, and so there was no school, we just drove around and got stuck all day long, like for fun. We'd drive around and like get stuck in front of someone's house. They would come out, help us get unstuck. And then we would drive down the road and get stuck in another spot. And then somebody would come out of their house and help us get out. And we would like, the city would be like, you know, they would pile the snow in the center of the road in Hazen, and then they kind of haul it out, I think, or they'll just leave it
pick
there.
It up later.
Yeah, but they'll make it like 2 lanes that are divided by a giant snow pile in the center of the road.
Yeah.
And like we would just hit those full speed, just drive as fast as we could get going and just plow into these things. And that was both with my car, and then my friend had a minivan that was like just legendary for, you know, being able to rip shit up in the snow.
Yep.
And then what about e-brakes?
Never had much fun with that.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah. There's some way worse stories than the ones that I have, fortunately.
Yeah, see, I didn't actually get my first car until I was 20.
Okay.
So I didn't have that like that high school mentality
Yeah.
of like, let's fuck shit up,
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, for me it was I got my first car because I was gonna have a kid. You know,
Okay,
and I needed
okay,
one. So I'm
okay,
like
this makes
prime
sense.
for an adulthood at this point.
a little different.
Yeah,
It's a little
lot
different. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm in a sense I'm glad I missed out on the real craziness
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
I would have fucked shit
Because
up.
it is very serious. It's fun to reminisce about it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, people were seriously injured and died in small towns doing all of the
Yeah,
silly,
yeah.
stupid things that we're talking about. It's
Yeah, growing up, I heard that a lot too. You know, it was always in the paper, and it would just be like some high school kid,
yeah.
just doing something outside
Yeah,
of town because you know.
When I had my accident, I remember so I guess I'll tell the story. I was like, I had been going through the process of joining the military. It was just like kind of getting real, and I had my PT testing and stuff like that was coming up on a Monday or something like that. And so that weekend, me and my friend were gonna go out ice fishing and just like contemplate life. And I was like, I'm gonna be going in the army, you know.
Yeah.
And so we drove out and found a really good ice fishing spot, set up a like pop-up ice fishing tent, and had been hanging out fishing and just having a great day, ice skating around and playing catch and whatever. And it was like the perfect day, and we were like, this is way too amazing to not have like all of our friends out here. Like, we should all be out ice fishing. So we drove back into town and like called everybody we knew, and we're like, we're going out, you know, and we couldn't get anybody to go with us. And we're like, all right, well, you know, I guess it's just us. Let's go back. And so we were driving back, and we weren't messing around or anything, but I was going too fast, which I was going 55, and the speed limit was 55, but it was black ice, and it was
Sure.
and it was winter time, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know enough to have the experience to know that I should really slow down there. We fishtailed, like we were going around a bend, and it just started fishtailing, and we spun completely around 360, and as we were like wrapping around to like continue spinning more than 360 degrees, like we missed like a huge telephone pole by like inches. I mean, I just like watched it go by the front of the car, and then we like went off of a like cliff basically. I mean, it was just like straight down. And we ended up hitting a big tree like dead on and just coming to a halt. And I remember like the airbags deployed. The horn was stuck on.
Oh, okay.
So the horn was just blasting like really loud, and there's like dust settling, you know, it felt like a bomb went off.
Yeah.
Like it was just like my ears are ringing, the horn's going off, there's like airbag dust all over the place. And I like wasn't saying anything, and my friend just like hits me in the chest, and he's like, say something, you know? And I was like, oh my God. And like we crawl out of this vehicle, and like, I mean, and neither of us had our seatbelts on. I have no idea how we didn't get ejected from the car. Or, like, it was just a total freak thing. And so the police showed up, and the police were like slipping and falling and like sliding down the hill. Like it was that slippery up top. Like they couldn't, and they were really struggling to like get down to us and get us up to the top of the like hill cliff deal that we like drove off of. And when I got up there and the police officer got me in his car, he reamed me out. It just was like so mad. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I just remember being like, I couldn't believe that he was like yelling at somebody who had just gone through that like traumatic experience, you know? In hindsight, it's like, because kids do that all the time. And like,
He's probably seen worse.
Yeah, exactly. He was just, you know, A, trying to make an impression, and B, was probably sick of seeing kids like not knowing how to handle this stuff. And, you know, and then how I got my license in the first place was like a little, probably should have failed, like right out the gate. Like, this guy's not ready to drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so they insisted that we like go on an ambulance, they insisted we go to the hospital, I guess. Yeah, we got to the hospital, and I remember just like going into a room and like looking at myself in the mirror, you know, and just being like, I'm alive. Like, I can't believe it. And then the next thing I knew, my sisters and mom like burst into the room. And the only thing they were saying is, don't join the military. Like,
oh, yeah.
They were just like, do not join the army. Like, that was like the first things out of their mouth. And that's like the reason I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose like after that event, you know, when you're like, I'm alive.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
It takes you a moment to realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, like a brush with death is like, okay. Like, life is fragile.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think I fully grasped that somehow. I don't know why I wouldn't have by all my experiences prior, but yeah. Yeah. Cars, man.
Did you ever name your first car?
I think I did, but I can't remember what I named it. It feels like I did, but I can't. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Feel free to include that.